Hey, John Gilroy here. World famous Linus Torvalds recently said that applying AI to coding is like autocorrect on steroids. Today, let's look at zero trust, microsegmentation, and AI and see if the steroid analogy holds up. Hit the music, Manny. Welcome to the Federal Tech Podcast, the podcast that connects you to federal technology leaders. My name is John Gilroy, and I'll be your moderator. Our guest in the virtual studio is Louis Echenbaum, federal CTO at a company called Color Tokens. Louis, are you good buddies with Linus Torvalds?
Sure, absolutely. And love the steroids analogy because it's our adversaries are taking steroids, right? It's great sports. Our adversaries, they're taking the steroids. We got to start injecting them too with some AI steroids. So love the analogy.
So the youngsters listening to this don't realize, but this Linus guy was the guy who came up with the web. I mean, he figured it out in the mid-'90s, and he's just a real bright guy. And they're always asking him about AI and where its application is. Yeah. And I think if you're in the federal government, you're saying, well, where's the AI application? And we're getting pushed towards zero trust. And is this a tool we can use? Is this a good tool, bad tool? I thought we'd bring you in and talk about Color Tokens, what it's all about. Sure. And you've had many years experience in the federal government. You can bring me a realistic approach to using this and going with zero trust. So let's just slap you right in the face with some mandates here and get some fans here. EO 14028 OMB guidance. I mean, you show up for work and you get hit by these guidelines. You're getting pushed into zero trust. So how does Color Tokens fit in with helping my listeners try to adapt to zero trust?
Sure. And just a quick background, because like you said, I'm in Color Tokens a couple months now. I'm their federal CTO working with federal agencies to help solve real problems with real tools that work, right? So prior to that, I was the CISO at the Department of Interior. I was also their zero trust program manager. I've been living, eating, breathing zero trust for the last 10 years, right? So after the OPM breach, we at DOI, at the time I was the deputy CISO, we came up with our first microsegmentation strategy. It was called Secure Enclaves. It was really, the idea and concept was we're going to rebuild our entire security stacks around our high value assets, but it was all hardware based. The cost of hardware and labor, it was too expensive, it got shelved. So we didn't do anything with zero trust for a while. Then Executive Order 14028 came out, which drove federal agencies to develop strategies for zero trust. But the real kingpin that got us all moving was OMB 22-09. Came out January of 2022. That effectively gave me my job as a zero trust program manager at the Department of Interior, which I really enjoyed. And it provided federal agencies with direction to implement foundational capabilities for zero trust, focus on identity management, strong identity management, EDR solutions, understanding your data. And it got us moving. It got us moving in the right direction, right? But I think one of the things that kind of missed the mark on a little bit was, the foundational principles of zero trust, right? Zero started with the whole idea that you have to assume breach. It doesn't say accept breach. We still want to try to do breach. It doesn't say accept breach. It says assume breach. We still want to do everything we can to prevent a breach, right? The reality is, sometimes there are breaches, and what you want to do is build resilience into your network, so that if there is a breach, say you have a laptop that gets compromised, the adversary is not able to move laterally to a high value asset and compromise some of your critical data, right? So it's all about focusing on building resilience into your network. And I've worked in cyber a long time, and that's actually a hard concept for cyber professionals to accept, right? They want to believe that they can stop the adversary from getting in. And again, we want to do everything we can to do that. But by assuming breach, by going back to the basics of zero trust principles, which is what are the high value assets in your organization, and how can you build security controls as close as you can around them so that there is a small breach, it doesn't become a major breach. And that's what Color Tokens does. You've heard microsegmentation. Microsegmentation, I fear, is becoming a buzzword now, like zero trust, right? And I don't think people understand the value of it.
So I was talking to a guy in the Navy, And I said, well, explain this microsegmentation. He said, well,
Yeah.
you know, like a submarine, if there's a breach, it's compartmentalized. And so there's different compartments to prevent the water from getting in. And I said, wow, that's an easy way to understand what microsegmentation is, because if you assume a breach, then we know the water's getting in the ship, but if it only goes to one certain area, you know, it's not going to go into the motor room or the control panel.
Well, yeah, exactly. And that's a great example. And that's another, again, microsegmentation allows you to build these secure containers around your critical assets. So if you have a small breach in the network, it doesn't become your breach, which basically stops your mission, right? The submarine analogy is great. One of the things we do with our product is we don't just build microsegmentation for IT. We also do it for OT. So everything now is connected. Everything is connected, right? Whether it's your refrigerator or your cooling unit in your submarine, right? So just think about that. Say there's a I don't know, someone on a submarine has a laptop and somehow it gets compromised, and an adversary is able to move laterally into an OT environment and put some false readings into your cooling unit that could effectively shut down your submarine, right? So this is what we do with microsegmentation in its simplest form. You know, our adversaries, their attacks have become more sophisticated. They are using Gen AI now to enable them to be more effective, faster, more efficient. But the tactics they use are still pretty similar. The idea is get a foothold inside the network somehow. Let me get a foothold. And it's almost always a user endpoint. They get a foothold, they look around the network, they scan, they look for a vulnerability on a critical asset, a port that's open, and they move to it. Now they've compromised your critical asset. What we basically do is shut down those ports around those critical assets so that your end user laptops are not able to be compromised, and then the adversary can effectively compromise a critical asset.
I talk to all kinds of people in the Navy, submarine people and people on aircraft carriers. So here's a problem. You mentioned OT, and boy, that is brought up. Yeah. So if, let's say, we have a sensor on an aircraft carrier, and it goes out for 18 months, and then there's an update, and it's not a software update. So when you said you folks have handled OT, I went, there's a challenging problem, especially in the military. I mean, they're geographically dispersed. There's limited access, and many times there may be OT operational technology devices there that can't be upgraded or patched. So how does Color Tokens handle this whole challenge of OT? I mean, this is the hot one.
Yeah. Well, OT is huge. It's another big priority in federal government. And again, from my experience working at the Department of Interior, we managed, some very critical infrastructure there. You've heard of the Hoover Dam, I'm sure. The Bureau of Reclamation, which is a bureau within the Department of Interior, was responsible for managing that. And the problem with OT is, like you said, it's generally using software and hardware that is legacy equipment that you cannot patch. So there's going to be vulnerabilities. Now, you have less likelihood of impacts in these environments because generally they're disconnected from the internet, but there's always a backdoor in, or there's an insider threat that could bring in a vulnerability. So it's the same concept with the IT as it is with OT. It's ensuring that what are assets within your OT environments that you need to implement secure containers around so that there is a threat within a vulnerability within an end user device. They can't move laterally to that critical asset and shut down Hoover Dam, right? So again, I think OT has become a great focus now because for years we thought, we don't have to worry about OT because they're usually not connected to the internet. And so again, less likelihood of a threat, but the impact is enormous. So we have to use good risk management practices to determine how much are we willing to invest to ensure that there is not a huge impact.
There's a guy named Simon Sinek. He always says, start with why. Well, I'm going to start with the how. So how do you guys do visibility in these diverse environments? And an aircraft carrier, a submarine, by the way, satellites and all kinds of, just looking at the Department of War, there's so much stuff going on there. So what is the special that Color Tokens brings to the whole concept of visibility? Yeah,
and I'll start with the IT side, move to the OT side. Because and again, as a former federal CISO, and if you talk to other federal agency CISOs, they'll tell you the same thing. One of the biggest challenges you have is visibility inside your networks. What are all your systems communicating with? What are the traffic flows? And so what we do is, we have a couple of capabilities. We can immediately, one of the things we can do is we can actually integrate with almost all of the EDR solutions that are out there already, right? If you're using Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, CrowdStrike, Sentinel-1. We have full integrations with them. So we could immediately implement our software. It's all software-based, very easy. And we can pull in information from these EDR solutions. We also pull in information from multiple other information sources in your environment, your identity management, your SIM, whatever threat information. And we take that information and first we map the traffic flows in all of your network to see what everything's talking to. We then look for, hey, where do you have vulnerabilities in these environments? Where do you have known exploited vulnerabilities, which is a big thing right now. We also can map these systems to the MITRE attack framework. What TTPs are existing in your environment? Do you have lateral movement attacks? And from there, leveraging AI, we got to talk about AI. That's the big thing now. Leveraging our AI, we have an LLM that'll allow you to go in right now. It's basically a chat GTP function where you can say, hey, show me where I have known exploitable vulnerabilities in my systems, and it'll show you. And then you can say, all right, can you show me which one of these are mapping to any of the MITRE attack framework TTPs, such as lateral movement? It'll show you. And then you can ask the question, well, what do I do? And then it'll show you how to build a secure policy around these critical assets.
So you have a tool on your website that does that, does it? It looks at some of those things, that like the small tool?
Well, yeah. So here's what we do. If you go to our website, you can sign up for what we call a breach readiness assessment. And it's very simple. We just put
colortokens.com. Yeah.
Colortokens.com. Thank you, John. Yes. So basically you sign up for a breach readiness assessment, and then we can come in and literally within a matter of hours, we can map out your network, map out your internal application flows, traffic flows, and we can show you where you have risks in your environment, where you have HVAs that may have ports that are open that are communicating with devices that could prevent high risk. And we can show you exactly how to build secure containers around these environments. And here's the other thing, the challenge with microsegmentation over the years is it's been hard, right? It's a lot of people don't understand, number one, what it is and how to implement it. With hardware, it was difficult. Now with software tools, it's easier, but it's still been challenging because you've had to work with multiple organizations, your application developers, your ops people, your cyber people. But again, with our tool now, we just map it out. We show you where you have these risks, these vulnerabilities. We allow you to build policies, and we do it in a way where the other concern is people are concerned, okay, I implement this policy, it's going to break something. So we have a progressive method of implementing policy. The first thing you do is you implement it in monitor mode, and then monitor the traffic, see what you need, see what you don't need, and you can progressively implement the security controls over time so that you don't break anything.
Good. I listen to podcasts. One of the podcasts I listen to is called Feds at the Edge. I kind of like it.
Yeah.
Listened to one last week, and they said, well, there's an unintended consequence with deploying zero trust. And the guy went on, he said, what happens is it actually helps with our compliance. And so someone from your background, you understand compliance well. And so this is something that people aren't talking about. It's just the fact that you're making steps towards zero trust. It means that one of the results could be to enhance your ability to comply with some of these standards. So it's not all bad news. It's not all hard work.
It's not. And yeah, I've been focused on, I've done a lot of work in compliance over the year. I started in 2002, right after FISMA came out, and right when the CNA process came out. I've been working in implementing ATOs for years for systems. I will say this. I think there's some general misunderstanding about how zero trust plays in with the NIST risk management framework, 837, right? It doesn't replace it. Zero trust provides, principles that you incorporate into your risk management strategies. It certainly helps you with compliance. I'll be honest with you, John, over the years, I think in the federal government, we focus too much on compliance, too much on checking the box. We got to make sure, we have this control in place. Right now, what I want to do is to deliver good capabilities to the federal government that helps them improve their security posture. That's what our product does. It also helps with compliance, yes, but I think and you're seeing a lot of this now, there needs to be really a big change in how we implement our authority to operate for our systems across federal government. It's become a huge effort, a huge paperwork effort. We need to figure out how to automate that using tools like ours, right? Automating the ability to understand, what controls I have in place, feeding it into your GRC tools so that we're not just checking the box on compliance. It actually is valuable to us.
I go to events all the time, and I was at one event, and I sat at a lunch table and talking to a couple federal technology leaders from some agency that will remain
Yeah.
nameless. Anyway, so we go back and forth about zero trust and everything, and they're saying, it's going to throw a monkey wrench into the works. How's that
Yeah.
for an old-fashioned phrase? It's like, yeah, we want to do it, but it's going to screw everything up, and it's going to slow down. But you want productivity, and so.
Yeah.
What's the counter argument when you're sitting with an agency leader and they go, hey, we love you. We love zero trust, but we got taxes to get out. We got this. We got these reports to come out. I mean, that's what the big problem I thought was during the federal shutdown was that they had reports that had to come out. I mean,
Right.
these are important things. There's no deadlines on there. And so how do you handle the objection where saying, Louis, we love you, want to do it, but it's just going to slow down the game here.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, I get it. I mean, look, we don't deliver cybersecurity services just for the sake of it, right? We are there to help enable the mission to be successful in what we do and to help them. When I was leading the Zero Trust program at the Department of Interior, one of our key focuses was not just cybersecurity, but improving customer delivery, customer service. Because I think that's another thing that people may not understand. Zero Trust is an enabler for better services, particularly in these hybrid worlds, right? I'll give you an example. Prior to us implementing certain zero trust capabilities, people just to get to their payroll service, they'd have to connect to a VPN, log into a VPN, remember a password. You had a list of passwords, and then now just by implementing some of our zero trust capabilities, it made certain things easier. Zero trust in our modern world of hybrid environments, on-prem networks, clouds, distributed systems all over the place. It's an enabler for our customers, right? It makes it easier for them to access services securely. So yeah, we can't, if you're as a federal CISO, I can tell you, your job is not just to prevent people from getting into your environment. It's to work with the mission organizations to enable them to deliver good services at the lowest risk possible. And again, that's what we're trying to do. And I totally understand, right? The government, they deliver services to citizens. That's what we do. I did it for 23 years, John. Our job in the cyber world is to ensure they do it as effectively as possible, as securely as possible, and not to be a roadblock to them. And again, that's where our service helps, right? We are not just implementing microsegmentation for the sake of it. We're helping to protect these environments, but there's also a value proposition to what we do, because by leveraging software-based microsegmentation, ultimately you'll realize a return on investment in lower costs in hardware, lower costs in labor. So there is a value proposition to implementing software microsegmentation.
3 weeks ago, I was up in Boston. I interviewed one of these MIT startups, and we talked about threat detection in the federal government.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about this whole microsegmentation and visibility and color tokens and AI. It seems like that could be the unintended benefit of this approach is improved threat detection and automating some policies. So there's, I think people think about the burden of it, but there's all these benefits that people really don't talk about. So it can help with threat detection, can it?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And we talked a little bit about our current AI capabilities, and we have an AI roadmap that's very aggressive. So right now, like I said, we have basically a chat GPT function that you can leverage to ask questions about, what is the current security posture of my environment. And our tool, we pull in data from multiple sources. Like I said, we pull in the CISA advisories, all the known exploited vulnerabilities. We pull it into our policy engine, along with your EDR tools, your vulnerability assessment tools. So we have all this information that goes into an LLM where you can ask questions. Phase 2 of our AI is what we call teammate, which is this is where we go into agentic AI. And the reality is our adversaries, we've already seen it with the Anthropic issue, right? Our adversaries are already starting to use agentic AI to attack us. So we have to fight back with the same tools. So with our agentic AI, what we can do is all this information we pull in, threat information, vulnerability information, identity information, our agentic AI will now look at that and automatically say, hey, look, you have a known risk to this critical system. It has a known exploited vulnerability. It's mapped to a MITRE TTP. Here's a policy you can implement right now that prevent it. It'll just build the policy for you, and then you can decide what you want to do. depending on depending on the level of the threat, you could just say, all right, implement policy. Or again, you could take the progressive approach. Like I said, you put it in monitor mode and then progressively implement controls to protect the device. So that again, the Anthropic issue is pretty eye-opening for a lot of people. I think that's our biggest fear with AI, is that someone can poison it, trick it into doing something we don't want it to do, and then and do something that, like what happened with Anthropic, that can help the adversary attack our assets.
Yeah, and they front page news today, they have a new version of their cloud out, so it's fascinating. Well, this whole idea of zero trust, I think it has to be presented in a lot more benefits than just security, because you talk about threat detection, you talk about compliance, you talk about officiating automation, so it can be a whole lot of benefits to that. And I think the listeners should understand color tokens, new on the scene. I think it's got a lot of good to offer, and I think you should go to the website and maybe run their little their breach analysis, and you may be surprised, huh?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Please, free of charge. We'll do a breach analysis, show you where any types of issues, and we're happy to help you resolve those.
We're running out of time here, unfortunately, Louis. You have been listening to the Federal Tech Podcast with John Gilroy. I'd like to thank my guest, Louis Echenbaum, Federal CTO at Color Tokens. Thank you, Louis.
Thank you so much, Tom.